Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Singapore once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a couple of times before. So the last beers that I reviewed from these guys over the last few weeks have been really impressive. We tried a New England Double IPA, then a Japanese Rice Lager, and then a Kolsch, and all of them were great. But for this review, we are going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and try something big, dark, and heavy. Now, this particular beer is meant to be very, very good. It's a style that I very much enjoy, and it is supposed to be a really nice example of that style, actually. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Singapore. Like I said, we're going to go out to the western part of the island to a little place called Tuas, and that means that we're going to have a look at my last beer that I have at the moment from Alive Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Chocolate Bomb. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So Untappd lists this one as an Imperial Pastry Stout. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be exactly like that though. It does contain cocoa nibs or cacao nibs, never sure how to pronounce that. So yeah, I think it's going to be on the sweeter end of the spectrum. But as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, pastry stouts are a little bit of a hit or a miss for me. I don't like the kind of marzipan or granola flavours that you can get out of some of them, but I do have a feeling this one's going to be a little bit more like a sweet stout. I love my old kind of Imperial milk stouts, Imperial sweet stouts and stuff like this, and also the old school RISs. So I'm just curious to see what this one is actually going to have in store for us, because I have been very impressed with the beers that I've had from Alive Brewing so far. So yeah, hopefully this one carries on in the same vein. But let's crack on with this beer then and see how we get on. This is the Chocolate Bomb 10% Imperial Stout from Alive. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Alive Brewing Company so far, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Singaporean playlist along with a number of other beers. That's going to be added to whenever we get the opportunity, but do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very, very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Alive Brewing once again then. So Alive Brewing Company, as I've mentioned already, are based in Singapore, and the company was founded back in 2020 by two friends. This was Chin Yang Chong and Ryan Yue. So Chin Yang has a background as a financial analyst, while Ryan is a chemical engineer by trade, and both apparently had dabbled in home brewing for quite a few years, and they also used to travel and try beers from across the world. One of their real stories that they have is from Cologne, which is why we had the Kolsch called One Night in Cologne. But basically, after having travelled around the world and tried lots of different beers in their home areas, they were very keen to have a go at making their own stuff. So they did this, and they started home brewing, and then they decided that they wanted to take this project commercial. So the brewery that they have is based in Tuas in the western part of Singapore, and they took the decision to have their own facility rather than gypsy brewing as many Singaporean brewers do. And their first beer, which was a session IPA called A False Sense of Security, I believe they still produce that one, it was first released in March of 2020. But unfortunately, this was the time when the COVID lockdown was just about to kick in, but they were very successful with that, and they managed to push on and get the beer out there to different bars and things like this, and to push internet sales as well. But over the years, the brewery became highly respected and decorated, and they're known in particular for their lagers and IPAs, and they're only brewing on a very small 5 US barrel brew house, which is maybe about 750 litres, something like that, and this means that they're producing approximately 3,000 litres of beer per month. But as of May 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 95 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And yeah, I've been very, very impressed with the quality of stuff that I've had from these guys thus far. So yeah, definitely worth checking these guys out if you get the chance. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about a live brewing company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, it is pretty straightforward, the old school kind of cartoon bomb on there, which I do like. It does tell you a little bit, just a very slight little bit about the beer on the side there. One of the things I would say that a live brewing should do, they always put their branding just down here, you know, in a really small way. I think they should, you know, focus on that a little bit more and maybe put it up on the top there so it's a wee bit more visible. But yeah, you can see at the bottom corner of the beer there is a live brewing company, red bottle cap on the can, as we've had on the bottle rather, as we've had from all their beers thus far. But like I mentioned earlier, this one is a 10% Imperial Stout, and it tells you that it has cocoa nibs in it on the side as well. This one apparently, when it says batch number 0123, I think that might be just the month January of 2023. So we're drinking this beer actually, if that's right, when it's about a year and 4 months old. And there is a wee touch of sediment in the bottom of that, so that is believable, but it says it's best before January 2026. And I think I read somewhere as well that these guys until recently were only producing one Imperial Stout a year, but I think they have just released a very new one at the time of filming, which is May 2024. But yeah, all in all, really nicely presented, this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. I've been looking forward to this beer since I ordered this one online, so yeah, this should be very nice. Big thank you to the guys as well at Alive for bringing this box to iBrew for me as well. I think it was Qing Yang that brought it along there for me and made sure that I got the beers before I left Singapore, so that was pretty awesome of them to do that. So yeah, let's just line everything up so that my OCD is happy, and there we are. So we got pretty much all the sediment out the bottom of the bottle there, but I don't really see it in the actual beer, which is quite interesting. So yeah, you can see that this beer poured with pretty much not a lot of head, which is kind of interesting, but usually when it comes to Imperial Stouts, if you put wheat in them, that's what's going to help them retain their head a little bit, and they don't have wheat listed on the ingredients there. It just had a little foamy layer of a kind of, you know, tan brown kind of colour to it. But yeah, appearance wise, you can see this beer is a lovely sort of dark ebony rosewood colour, kind of Cola Zero type colour, I would say, which is kind of what you expect of the style. But if we shine the light through this one, it's one of the clearer Imperial Stouts that I've seen in recent times. Even if we wipe away the condensation from the side of the glass and things, it is certainly one of the clearer ones that I've seen over the last wee while. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. There are one or two little bits of sediment particle floating around in this too, which you would expect when the beer's about a year and a bit old. But yeah, looks good, this one. Interesting. I'm really curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. But yeah, appearance wise, nothing too surprising about this one, but like I say, I'm just surprised at how light this beer is. It's almost akin in colour actually to the colour of the bottle, which I wasn't quite expecting. I thought this was going to be a really big dark black thing pretty much, considering that it's a chocolate Imperial Stout. So yeah, interesting stuff, I have to say. You can see there's virtually no head on this beer now, but let's have a wee look at the aroma then and see how we get on. We don't need to say very much more about the appearance of this beer, so let's do the aroma then. Oh, that smells good, yeah. I think this beer is going to be pretty damn good, and obviously with the very positive experiences we've had of this brewery in the past, I do have quite high expectations for this one. So yeah, aroma wise, this is really, really nice. For me, the cocoa nib jumps out of this one at you right away. I don't think it's going to be like a full-on pastry stout, this beer. I think it is going to be more like a kind of old-school American sweet stout, to be quite honest with you. One of my favourite beers back in the day was Brewdog Riptide. That was always really, really nicely done. And I'm not sure exactly what the malty makeup of that was, but I'm pretty sure there was a wee bit of chocolate and things in it. But yeah, this one, it's one of the kind of like sweet, it's got quite a lot of sweet dryness to it, which I do very much like. So as I always say, just you should always take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. So we're going to break this one down now and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we actually try the thing. So let's do that. For me, the backbone of this beer, you do have a little bit of that roasty toasty well-fired bread crust in there, but I'd say that that takes a little bit of a back seat compared to other things that are going on in this beer. So yeah, roasty toasty well-fired bread crust in there. You've got a nice little bit of woody character as well, maybe a little bit of cracker, no, maybe not cracker, it's more like a kind of, if you think about that sort of charred edge of a cake in a baking tray, the aroma that you're getting is very much like that. So yeah, toasty cake edge to this one. Above that, there's a little bit of rye bread, like I'm getting a bit of sweet German rye bread out of this one. I'm wondering if there's a wee bit of carafa in here too, because with that bread crusty character I was talking about, you can smell this little bit of dryness, and you know, when you get like a well-fired bread crust, but it doesn't have the harshness of black malt, that's one of the characteristics of carafa malt, which is a trademark type of malt from the Weiermann maltery in Bamberg in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. So I'm wondering, I think there's a little bit of carafa malt in this, just from the way that's coming out. So yeah, you've got the toasty well-fired bread crust, you've got a slightly drier bread crusty note in there, then you've got this kind of cake edge sort of layer to it. But then yeah, sweet rye bread in this one for sure, or oily rye bread I think is a good way to describe it. Then definitely a wholemeal brown bread, but then above that, I'm pretty sure, just from the aroma, there's this kind of like chocolate sponge cake type thing coming out of this beer, which is really nice. So yeah, chocolate sponge cake for sure. Little hints of like vanilla to this one as well, but not too much. I think the vanilla is one of the kind of almost like byproducts of everything else that's going on in the beer. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this, I think, is really pretty damn nice actually. But yeah, above that kind of chocolate spongy note, and I will say within the chocolate sponge there is a wee bit of like a walnut or a hazelnut kind of going on. There is a little bit of nutty character just emanating from that. But yeah, above the kind of sponge cakey type character in there, you've got a really nice little bit of I would say you get the cocoa nibby dryness out of this one, so you can smell that dry, powdery cocoa nibby type character coming out of the beer. And yeah, the cocoa nibby dryness that comes out of this one, I think, is really quite nice, in fact. So for me, I would say you get a little bit like toasty brown sugar above that, which I think is great. So yeah, nice kind of toasty brown sugar. Yeah, toasty brown sugar in there. And above that, do you get a more oily brown sugar? I'm just trying to figure that out. Yeah, there's maybe a little touch of like oily treacle molasses type thing coming out of this one, but yeah, mostly dry kind of cocoa nibby powder, toasty caramel, yeah, bit of sweeter caramel as well, and then you've also got just that little bit of treacle molasses in the middle of the nose there. But like I say, the cocoa nib and the kind of nutty character that comes out of this one are some of the distinguishing features of it, I would say. So yeah, always take a little bit of time to just ponder over the malt base, but it's interesting with this one. I'd be very curious to see what they've done, because two of the ways that you can play with Imperial Stouts, you can either do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you like a really kind of leathery brown sugary component to this one. I've got a feeling that might be the case in here. Or you can do a double mash, and that's going to give you a really kind of big sticky mouthfeel. I don't know quite with this one yet. We'll be able to tell when we actually taste the beer though. But yeah, I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side of the beer, to be honest with you. I think some of these cakey and nutty esters, nutty notes that we're getting out of this beer will be due to the yeast that's been used. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things and the fruity side of the beer before we taste it. So yeah, for me, the backbone of the the hoppy side of things. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There is a wee bit of herbal character. And of course this beer, if it is about 1.5 years old, quite a little bit of the hoppiness will have dropped out. Galena is of course a very popular hop to use in Imperial Stouts. Well, you may as well, because they give you the nice red fruity notes. They interact well with a black malt base. So I've got a feeling it's one of those that's been used in here. But yeah, you do get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity, you get a wee bit of grassiness as well, and yeah, the way that this goes together I think is really nice in that regard. So yeah, a little bit of floral character, a little bit of grassiness as well, and then yeah, the way the fruitiness comes out I think is really nice. So let's focus on the fruity side of the beer. Yeah, green component, yeah, nice little bit of grassiness in there, but yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me is quite it's quite oily and quite wet in a sense. Like, I'm getting a lot of like blackcurrant out of it. It doesn't have too much in the way of sharpness. So yeah, a little bit of like quite a lot of juicy blackcurrant, maybe a wee bit of fig in there, but there's maybe a little touch of oily plum as well. Yeah, oily plummy characters, blackcurrant, figgy notes. Yeah, the way that all of that pieces together I think is really quite nice. But I think we're going to get a wee bit more complexity out of the fruits when we actually taste the beer. The fruits really take a little bit of a back seat in this one compared to other things. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time just to ponder over that aroma before you get stuck in. But I think we should have a go at this beer now and see what we get. So yeah, this is the Chocolate Bomb, a 10% Imperial Stout from Alive Brewing Company in Tuas down in Singapore. This is the last of the 4 beers that I brought back with me, and I've been very impressed with the stuff that these guys are producing. So we need to review more from them in the future. But let's try this one then. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. That's nice, actually. I can see, I'm going to say on first taste, I can see why people would consider this one to be a pastry stout, because it really does have the dryness. I think they've laced this one with cocoa nibs. That's the impression that I have. It hasn't got that kind of granola-y, marzipan-y type flavour that some of these pastry stout yeasts can give you. And that's, you know, those are 2 features of some modern pastry stouts that can really put me off. That's why that style is very much a hit or a miss for me. But this one feels as if it's a little bit purer, and the dryness that you're getting out of this one is primarily due to, I think this thing is laced, absolutely laced to the brim with cocoa nibs. I think I read on the website that they were using Belgian chocolate cocoa nibs in this one, although cocoa nibs I think are grown in South America and Africa, pardon me, primarily. But yeah, this beer, it's a little bit more like an RIS, Russian Imperial Stout, crossed with a drier pastry stout, I would say. That's kind of how this one goes together. But this is certainly one that I can enjoy and I can't drink. It's not got those 2 elements, as I mentioned, that I'm not a great fan of. So yeah, let's kind of dig into this one a little bit more and just see how we go. And yeah, when you take the second sip of it, it does start to sweeten up. You've always got to remember about impact flavours and then residual flavours, as I would call them, when it comes to many beer styles actually. But this is a really nice one. It gives you everything you want. You've got a bit of toasty roastiness in the base, a bit of smoothness on top of that, kind of dry lingering sweetness into the aftertaste, a little bit of fruitiness as well, and you have still got some hoppy character out of this one. So yeah, let's just break the beer down and describe it for you a bit more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty character in there. A wee bit of woodiness as you move further forward on that middle third of your tongue. And then yeah, above that you've got that drier bread crusty character, which I would say is quite, I would say that's quite reminiscent of, yeah, I would say that that's quite reminiscent of Carafa malt from Germany. I was brains going all over the place there, but yeah, I think there is a little bit of like some kind of Carafa in this particular, maybe one of the Carafa specials gives you that, and sort of dry black bread crusty type character there, but not overly harsh. So yeah, above that layer, you certainly start to get the rye bready notes coming out of the beer. So yeah. And yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, a big sort of rye bready character coming out of this one. Then you've got that wholemeal brown bready character coming out of the beer, which I think is great. And yeah, you have the rye bready character, wholemeal brown bready character. Then above that, you get this layer of what is like a kind of chocolate muffin type quality. It has or maybe chocolate sponge, like quite a dry chocolate muffin, chocolate spongy type note out of this one. But yeah, there's a little bit of kind of nutty character coming out of the beer, which I do really enjoy. So yeah, a little bit of nuttiness in there, and then yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is it's really very nice. So yeah, a little bit of nuttiness, kind of walnut, almond, pecan sort of thing, just emanating out of the flavour in this beer, and that comes out. You get more of the cocoa nibby dryness and the nuttiness coming out of this beer into the aftertaste. But yeah, above all of that, you have you have everything else sitting on top of that. So yeah, for me, the the character that you have above, the sort of flavour, sorry, that you have above that kind of cakey layer, if you like, of the beer is all about the cocoa nib. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you get the really dry sort of, I'd say like 70% cocoa chocolatey notes in there. You can feel that, and then as you move further forward from that, you start to feel the chocolate mellow out. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So that's definitely detectable in this beer. So yeah, roasty, toasty chocolate and dry cocoa nibby notes at the back, and then as you move further forward, I would say that it mellows out to maybe be about 50% cocoa. So yeah, the cocoa chocolate that you get out of this one, I think, is really, really nice, actually. And that's kind of one of the defining features of this beer, is that dry cocoa nibby character. Above all of that, you do get a little bit of brown sugar out of this one, but that's obviously not the focus of the beer, I would say. So yeah, above the kind of cocoa nibby layer in this one, you get that little circle in the middle of your palate where all the brown sugars come out. So the base, you've got a little bit of toasty brown sugar in there. Above that, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of leathery, you've got toasty brown sugar in there, more of a leathery brown sugar. And then above all of that, you've got a wee bit of a sweet, you've got a little bit of a more kind of treacly molasses note in the dead centre of your palate, which is obviously going to be the alcohol. But at 10% ABV, this beer actually covers its alcohol pretty well, I would say. So yeah, the way that this one goes together in that sense, I think, is really quite nice. And again, it gets a thumbs up from me. On the middle third of the palate, I think that's everything we really need to say. So let's go to the back third of the palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, then you get a little bit of the rye bread in the base, the brown bread on top, then the chocolate sponge, and a wee bit of like the really dry toasty cocoa nibs on top of that. But the base of that back third of your palate, yeah, you've got the kind of well-fired bread crust, you've got the more carafa type bread crust in there as well. You can feel the rye bready layer is a little bit lighter and more airy, the wholemeal brown bready layer is a little bit lighter and more airy, and above that you've got the kind of chocolate spongy type layer coming out of this one, which I think again is quite nice and a bit lighter, more airy, and all three of those layers are just that little bit drier, and you can feel some of the toasty cocoa nibby characters just creeping over the top in that one as well. So yeah, that's really interesting. And then above all of that, you start to get the yeasty notes coming out of the beer. So yeah. So yeah, for me, The yeasty side of this beer is quite interesting because it is very much like, you can feel like it's like a really dry brown bready type character. So in the middle you've got that really dense dry brown bready character. There's a little bit more like a kind of sponge cakey note around the edge, and then it's a wee bit more like a toasty bread crusty character at the very edge of that. So yeah, the yeasty character in this one adds a wee bit more roastiness and bitterness to the beer, which is quite interesting. I've not seen that in an Imperial Stout in quite a wee while. Usually the yeasty character is more kind of dry and bready, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's interesting. But definitely, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think is really quite nice. Yeah. On the hoppy side of things then, we can move on to that now. I think there is a little bit of hoppy character in this beer, but obviously it doesn't play a big role in the overall vibe of the beer, and the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of beer styles anyway. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate you can feel a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, there's a wee touch of herbal character, and then as you edge further forward along the sides of your palate, you get a little bit more floral aromaticity. Then round the front curve of the tongue, just a wee bit more of a kind of lighter grassy sort of note coming out of the beer, which is very, very nice as well. So yeah, hoppy character lingers there into the aftertaste, but you know, you can feel that that has dropped out a wee bit of this beer. Let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate is kind of similar to the border region further back. Bit of rye bread in the base, brown bread in the middle, and a kind of cakey note on top. Then the base of that front third of your palate, yeah, you've got a nice kind of there's a nice little bit of toasty bread crust in the base, the kind of carafa type notes there, the rye bread, the brown bread, and then the cakey notes, and a wee bit of the kind of drier coconutty notes, but it's a little bit more silky and smooth on that front third of your palate. But then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer. So let's focus on that fruity side of things with this one. So yeah, fruity side of this beer for me, it's quite interesting because getting a lot more dry fruity character out of this one actually. Even when you take the beer in, yeah, you do get like a little bit of a juicy plum or a raisiny note when you take the beer in, but that fades away really quickly to be more of a dry fruity note. So at the back of that front third of your palate, in the base, you're getting a little bit more of like a kind of datey type note out of this one, and as you move further forward, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of oily sultana quality. And as you reach the front, as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, the fruity oily bubble, it's more kind of figgy, and then into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's a little bit more to do with, you know, it is a little bit more to do with a kind of black curranty type flavour. Is there a wee bit of blackberry there as well? Yeah, the kind of the fruity side of this one, yeah, definitely dates, sultanas, figs, black currant, and a wee bit of like plum and raisin in the beginning. I think that's a fair way to describe the fruit on this one, to be honest with you. I don't get too much more out of that, but obviously the thing that really lingers into the aftertaste is a bit of that cakey sponge, the dry cocoa nibby notes, and then also like a wee bit of nuttiness and some of the bread crusty character as well. Those are the things that really linger into the aftertaste of this beer with me. But yeah, in all, this is a really quite interesting one. I've not had an Imperial Stout quite like this one in a good long time, and it's nice. I'd be curious to see these guys do like an Imperial Milk Stout, and also like a proper old school RIS. I'd be curious to try that sort of Imperial Stout from them as well. But in all, this is pretty damn good actually. And something interesting, the other three beers that we tried were very much keeping to style almost. This one seems a little bit more experimental almost, and they've done it pretty well actually. So this brewery I think has a big future They just need to get their marketing and all this kind of stuff right, and I think these guys will do very, very well. A lot of people say they're the best brewery in Singapore based on the beers that I've tried. Not far wrong with that, not far wrong. But yeah, very good stuff actually. Let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer... I'd say bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It does have a little bit of a silky, oily type mouthfeel to it. IBU wise, it's a bit hard to place because the beer does have a lot of dryness to it. From the cocoa nibs, the roasty side of the malt base, and a wee bit of the hoppy character as well. So maybe this beer sits around the sort of 50-ish, 60-ish IBU mark. But as I say, you can conflate the dryness in this one quite easily with the other stuff that's going on. The malt base, like we said, it has roasty toastiness underneath, smoothness in the middle, bit of dryness on top, and then a little bit of an oily sweetness. But yeah, it's mainly dryness that comes out of this one. Then yeah, a wee bit of hoppy character, and you've also got that nice little bit of oily, fruity note to this one as well. But all in all, this is a really, really nice beer. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but I would be very curious to try other Imperial Stouts from this brewery as well, because they can obviously do them very, very well. So yeah, an old school RIS or a big sweet Imperial Milk Stout could be an interesting proposition from this brewery. But yeah, if you like dry cocoa nibs, this is a beer you are very much going to enjoy. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Chocolate Bomb, a 10% Imperial Chocolate Stout with lots of dry cocoa nibby character from the wonderful Alive Brewing Company in Tuas in Singapore. I think for the moment this will be my last Singaporean beer review until we go back there, probably April next year. And yeah, then we'll bring back a bunch of other stuff from other Singaporean breweries too. But in all, really, really positive experience with the Singaporean craft beer scene so far. And yeah, it's been cool to review some of the breweries' beers for you here on YouTube as well. So let's leave it at that for this one, and we will return very soon with more Singaporean beers. But until the next time, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Alive Brewing Company's social media, and check out all the other wonderful breweries and places that you have in Singapore, because there's some really, really good beer down there these days. But yeah, check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys in the next review. The Chocolate Bomb from Alive Brewing Company in Tuas in Singapore. Until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, and cheers, and a big shout out to all the guys in the Singaporean craft beer scene. Ciao just now.